Hello, podcast listener, and welcome to this episode of JJ Meets World featuring Ryan Dahl. We're going to talk sailing, we're going to talk being a member of Go Murphy, and Tucker and I debate whether or not you should consume sausage in link or patty form. All of this and so much more on this episode, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I think breakfast is my least favorite meal of the day, and it's it's only because I think that you're really restricted with what you can have for breakfast.
What is considered socially acceptable.
Right. So you could have spaghetti as your first meal of the day.
You could do I did in high school, which would be 2 Slim Jims and a can of Pepsi.
Right, but but the society wouldn't call that breakfast. They would just call that, a snack meal. Yeah. And here's the thing. Some of my favorite breakfasts have been meals from previous days. I had stew for breakfast 3 days in a row this week because, pro tip, I used parsnips instead of potatoes. They kept their shape. They didn't not get mealy. I really liked it a lot. But one of my favorite foods is a breakfast staple, which is bacon. When I go to a continental breakfast that has bacon, so a lot of Embassy Suites have the eggs and bacon sausage, maybe a pancake station, waffle maker. I get a bunch of bacon, and then I use the toaster, and I toast 2 pieces of bread, throw a copious amount of peanut butter on each side of the bread, put bacon in between so it's sweet and savory at the same time. Peanut butter is one of the best food staples.
It's like vibranium. It's very malleable. You can use it in so many different ways.
And it changes. Like heat changes peanut butter, where it becomes like
it's kind of melty,
a liquid now instead of a solid. And so that bacon sandwich is one of my all-time favorite foods.
Yeah, that's smart. I never even thought about making that combo, and I've eaten at a million different continental buffets at hotels, and I never put that together.
We'll go have some.
I would definitely try that if they had an English muffin too. I would toast the English muffin big time.
Take that awesome. Up a notch.
Yeah.
In England, do they just call them muffins?
Yeah, I don't know.
In Canada, do they just call it bacon?
I think so.
They call it ham.
Ham.
Yeah. Call it ham.
Why do we call it Canadian bacon?
Who knows?
Because it's cut in the shape of hockey pucks?
I never even thought about that. I wonder if that's what it is.
I highly doubt that's it.
Maybe,
That's too dumb.
how do you like your sausage? Do you like patties or links?
Ooh, well, I am a big fan of breakfast sandwiches, and so it makes sense to do a patty. Yeah, I would say patties. I would go for patties because more than often than not, if I'm eating sausage, it's part of a breakfast sandwich. If it's going to be just a side meat to my eggs and my potato dish, it's going to be bacon.
Okay.
And if it's at like frying pan here, they've got regular bacon and then big old bacon. You got to go for the big bacon.
Oh yeah.
Because there are places like I'm gonna name them. I'm gonna call them out right
Do
now.
it.
Denny's. Denny's has the most bullshit bacon.
Bullshit.
Because it's paper thin. And you get charged a fortune for it. It's bacon skin. It's not bacon.
Also, Denny's uses anthropomorphic bacon and egg people in their menu to be like, hey, try this. And I'm like, you're eating my sister.
Do you think Denny's just threw in the towel when they became like the joke in the Santa Claus, where they're the place where the crappy dad who couldn't cook dinner takes his son on Christmas Eve?
I think that was a corporate sponsorship that somebody signed off. Tim Allen Christmas movie? Yeah, we'll be in there. And then they saw how they were portrayed.
Do I remember correctly that they were out of chocolate milk?
Yeah. Oh. In fact, it's okay. So interesting story about the chocolate milk in the Santa Claus. The kid, so if you're not familiar with the movie, Tim Allen has his son on Christmas Eve. He and his wife are divorced. He's a workaholic, and he obviously is not a very good cook because he burns the turkey, and they end up going to a Denny's to have their Christmas dinner. They get seated, and they see a bunch of other dads who are all...
That's right.
One of them's got like a bandage on his hand, and there's also what looks like a bunch of Japanese businessmen who are all out eating. And so this woman comes over and she's like, are you with Tasha Miki Ironworks? And he goes, no. They seat them. And she, what would you like to drink? And he goes, I would like a cup of coffee. And he goes, chocolate milk, please. We're out. Regular milk's fine.
That's right.
When Jill and I were planning our wedding, when either of us had to concede to the other one for a plan, we would say, regular milk's fine. And then there's that great part where he goes, just so you know, they got hot apple pie. We did. Thanks. Tim Allen really shines in that first Santa Claus, and then they just get worse and worse and worse. Although, interesting note, in the second movie, there's a character named JJ who has like 5 seconds of screen time. He's a teacher at the school that he has to interact with. And there's a moment where he looks at the camera and he goes, Merry Christmas, JJ. And I've taped that and I keep it on my phone. So if I ever need something special, I'll have Tim Allen say Merry Christmas to me. Well, okay, we've talked about breakfast and Tim Allen more than I intended at the beginning of this podcast, but let's get into this episode. Ryan is our guest today. We get to talk about Go Murphys, which is not the Irish version of GoFundMe. It is a band. Yep. And then we get to talk about a sailing trip that is going to blow your mind.
I met Ryan a couple of years ago when I was on a video shoot for his band. And at one point in between takes, he told a few of us this insane story. And I'm so excited that we get to talk about it on the podcast today. So you're in for a treat.
Sailing is a lot of fun. And this story makes you both excited about sailing and not excited about sailing.
It definitely makes me not excited about sailing. Only that. Only that.
All right, folks, strap in. Thank you for listening to this episode of JJ Meets World. And hey, don't forget, you can find us on social media. Give our Facebook a like. You can also find us on patreon.com/JJ Meets World. It's a great place to go and donate to what we're trying to do here. Eventually, we'll have premium content. Just don't push me, okay? You're not my dad.
JJ Meets World.
Ryan Dahl, any relation to the guy who wrote the BFG?
Nope.
What was his name?
Roald Dahl. Like I can never remember. Like Roald. Like I don't remember what his like the consonants and syllables. I just know it's like Ryan Dahl.
You know, he's got the same last name as you.
Yeah, the same last name.
This is the same guy that did like Where the Sidewalk Ends, right?
No.
James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah, James the Giant Peach.
Oh, I'm
With,
thinking of Shel Silverstein.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I'm thinking of Shel Silverstein. My apologies.
Yeah.
That was a
Shel
bad-
Silverstein, actually, you kind of look like Shel Silverstein. Tucker, did you know that?
He's dumpy.
Yeah, big time dumper. Cool. But like in your face, you kind of look like him. So, but no relation.
No relation.
What about? Isn't there a famous brand of power tools like people can buy like Dahl brand leaf blowers and stuff? Any relation there?
No, but there should be. That's definitely like that because it's that Scandinavian style. You know that. I mean, I'm thinking that Dahl sounds super tough. So I mean that would be pretty cool. Although you know,
Do you refer to your house as the Doll House?
Dollhouse. You know, I used to when I like owed somebody some money, I'd be like, so I've got a couple of doll hairs for you. You know, I mean that was always the thing, and then you know, growing up, you've got the kids like, oh, so hey doll, where's Barbie or where's Ken? You know, those kind of things. But
Kids are friggin' cruel.
they are. Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a first name that rhymes with any curse word at all. I remember specifically second grade Mrs. Munn's class
Playing the banana game.
playing the banana game, the name game, and JJ, Bo Baby, Banana Fana, Fo Fe Fe, Me, My, Mo Me Me, JJ. And when it came to me, and I had already done this once before with my older cousin Ben, who had made fun of me for it, so I knew there was a bad word in mine. And I remember saying, Miss Munn, I don't want to play. And she's like, come on, Tucker. Yeah. And then I saw on her face the realization as it happened.
Right.
But none of the other kids picked up on it. And then the name game ended after me, like halfway through the class.
And for the rest of Tucker's life, he always thought that the word bucker was really bad. Okay, so you're in a band, huh?
Yeah.
You make the musics?
Well, we make the musics. Yep. I'm one of the dudes in one of these bands here in town. So yeah.
Is it Go Murphy?
Go Murphy. That is the name of the band. Yep. We've been around for quite a while now.
Yeah, you have.
You know, I mean, when you think about like the longevity of a lot of bands and stuff, and everything is so kind of free flowing. A lot of people, you know, you go where creativity kind of sends you. So it's not unheard of to like be in a band for months or a year or two, and then you kind of maybe something kind of stops you or you get motivated to do something different. But yeah, I mean we've been kicking it for like 7 years.
Whoa.
I mean, you guys
8
have
years?
a catalog. I mean, you have a lot of songs.
Yeah, we've been fortunate, you know, enough to like put out several releases. So I think we've got like 4 recorded albums, you know, an EP and then a couple other ones. Like this last one we did, like it's kind of like that borderline EP / like long play, like full length, you know, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
I feel like a band really decides they're going to last when they make a vinyl banner that they can hang up behind the drummer. And they're like, we're going to do it. We're going to invest the $45 in the vinyl banner,
Right,
with metal grommets.
Right. That is definitely yeah.
You know, Ween really hasn't changed that. Ween just travels with the same setup. It's just a big Boognish sign behind the drummer.
Yeah.
And then all of them barefoot.
Yep.
Really?
That's a...
Do you remember when Ween was in the It's Pat movie? It
Yes.
was awesome.
Oh my Lord. I don't.
Like
Wow.
they're who Pat plays with on stage,
Yeah,
right?
Pat. They invite Pat to play the tuba with them because they're like, Pat's so weird, and it would be perfect for Ween.
You're talking like It's Pat from Saturday Night
Yeah,
Live.
yeah.
I don't
Like,
even know. I don't
the
even
movie.
recall that movie. There was a movie about it. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, the main antagonist in the It's Pat movie is Charles Rocket, who is one of the like handful of people who ever said the F-bomb during SNL because he was a cast member and then got fired. So I think that was like part of Paramount being like, let's put Charles Rocket in this because
Yeah.
it'll really piss off Lauren Michaels.
A little bit of the thumb to him, huh?
And now he's dead. He's dead. He died.
Oh, it took a turn.
Yeah. So, what kind of music does Go Murphy put out?
I hate trying to I can never I really don't know what I like to just say rock.
Okay.
I think a lot of times you've got, in our case, there's 4 dudes, and the older I get, the more I feel like I want to relive my childhood a little bit, or like my adolescence. So I feel like the stuff I keep writing now and what I'm playing and listening to is more like that 90s
big band
kind of
throwback.
Noise. Yeah, big band. Yeah. There was this crazy scene going on with the tubas and whatnot that.
Well, it used to be that you could say a genre and you would know the sound of the band, right?
Right.
But now, so many bands might be under one genre, but their sounds are so different.
Right. And then there's so many different subgenres. It used to be I like heavy metal. And now if you just said heavy metal, it's such a vague, because you got
that's the top of the pyramid.
Right.
But then there's 30 things underneath it.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know. People kind of pick what they want to hear, and I think that's cool too. If somebody says, "Oh, you guys sound like Weezer," and then you find out Weezer is one of my favorite bands or something. But if somebody probably doesn't like Matchbox 20 and then says, "You guys sound like Matchbox 20," then you're like, well, okay, that kind of hurts a little bit or something, But I would guess that your inspirations is kind of what comes out in your music too. So kind of that grungy alt rock, I guess.
Okay.
Or you could say indie rock, and then that's the entire world of music that's, and before that was independent, no label music, and now it's this thing. So it's kind of strange to think about too.
So I've listened to a lot of Go Murphy music, especially since I worked on that video shoot a couple years ago. And I would classify it as it's a rock setup. Right, It's 2 guitars, bass, and a drum.
Yep.
Right, still. So it's a rock setup, but they definitely explore the full breadth of what you can do with that setup. You've got songs that are just balls to the wall rock, and then you've got ones that are sweeter, more melodic, more easy listening.
Yep.
So it fits within the genre, but they make it their own for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
I'm gonna give you a scenario, and you tell me how you react to it. Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it.
You get a call, and they say, "Hello, this is Joe Hollywood. I'm a producer on a movie, and we actually stumbled upon a Go Murphy track that we'd like to use in a new movie."
Mm-hmm.
Do you ask what the movie is, or do you just say you're gonna? And they say, "We'll give you $1,500 to be able to use the movie or use the song, but we're gonna take ownership of the song and put it on the soundtrack." And
well.
Specifically at that price point, or is the question whether or not they care what it's being used for, as long as the money's good?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both.
Well, we've kind of had situations like that, and it's always kind of tough. We did have we had this offer. I can't remember exactly how it happened or why or whatever, but there was the world of vaping, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about it. I'm not a vapor, but apparently there's vaping championships or vaping festivals
to see who can suck down the most juice.
Yeah, something really strange. Well, anyways, there is one that was happening in the UK, and they were looking for music for this stuff, and they were going to license it or whatever, and you get some money and stuff and be featured on these videos and stuff. And I remember when Marcus and I were kind of talking about it, we're like, what the hell? This is for fucking vaping? and it was no, we couldn't do that. I don't know. I guess depending on how much money, if it was going to change your life, you could probably look the other way in some aspects, but I think very much, art's personal, and you wouldn't, if it goes against your morality or something, if you found something completely objectionable, the money probably wouldn't be worth it.
Well, Mr. Dahl, that was a very long answer to my question.
Your question was ill-formed and
No, would you take it? Would you obviously, is the plot important? Is a Jennifer Love Hewitt rom-com? And we're going to have another band
Heartbreakers
2. No, I would watch Heartbreakers 2 because you could probably get Gene Hackman out of retirement.
I still need to see the end of Heartbreakers 1 because the film melted at the Cinema Grill when I watched it.
No.
And then I got food poisoning at the same time.
Oh,
That was like the last week of the Cinema Grill.
man.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Fond memory of that place, man. That's
Yeah.
where I saw Pulp Fiction.
Really? Do you remember what meal you had?
I don't remember a lot of that. I just remember seeing Pulp Fiction there.
In its final days, when I went there to go watch Heartbreakers, they weren't charging admission anymore. It was just come and watch the movie. We'll just charge you for food. So you walk in, there's food all over the floor. So you're like, this place is already downhill. Like it's already done. I can tell. So I'm gonna get here while the getting's good.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get a pizza though. They just put it in the oven, right?
Sure.
So I ordered a taco pizza and a glass of water. Got charged 50 cents for the glass of water. The taco pizza was just covered in olives, which I don't like. But I ate it anyways, like
Sure.
a big boy.
Yeah,
right? I was like,
yeah.
no, come on.
Good job.
You eat this like a big boy. Got food poisoning from it, though. Then the movie melted in the third act, and they had no other print. Like, they couldn't fix it. And so, to apologize, they gave us all free tickets to the Cinema Grill, which does not charge admission for tickets.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I like that
A
style.
week later, they announced they were closed.
Wow.
Was it you and I worked with a dude named Jeremy at the
Yep.
Fargo Theater? Was it Jeremy who did it? Because
I don't know if he would have been. Well, he probably would have been there at the time, but I don't know. When the way he told the story was that when he started working there, their projectionist had just quit, and they had no one to run the movie.
That day, the
he'd walked
projectionist had
in.
quit.
He was already a projectionist at the Fargo Theater. It's like, oh, I can do it. So he started working there.
it's
right
like,
then.
could I get an application? I want to be a projectionist. Like, could you start 5 minutes ago? Come on up. Which I think is interesting. Ryan, I am told that you have a pretty insane story about sailboating
Yeah.
from Florida to Cuba.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
what year was this when this happened?
So that would be in 1999. I was 20. Yeah, I wasn't even 21 yet. So it was 99. Like it was in November is when we went down to the Keys and
November.
stuff. So yeah, it was, so we went kind of over the holidays basically.
So if you've ever spent time in the Keys, the thing that I'm most interested in is like at one point you're going to have a conversation in the Keys about how Cuba's only 90 miles away.
Right.
And like, it's pretty much just straight there. And, it's the equivalent of here to Jamestown.
But it's like an entire world. It could be on a different planet. Cause like at that time, there was still like very, very heavy sanctions. I mean, it was still like, that was the only place in the United States in the world, that you couldn't travel to. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I think there was like some beginning talks. Cause that was like, there were some talks about like grain trading here in North Dakota. I can't remember if it was Dorgan or who it was, but so there was like this hint of like lightening up. And the guy I sailed with, Jeff, he was in the Navy and he was stationed at Guantanamo and stuff for a while. So he always had this like interest to go back, and see it, to experience it again outside of like being in the service. And when he told me of his idea, I was like, yeah, this sounds great. I've never seen the ocean. I've never really traveled outside of the tri-state area or to Winnipeg for the senior trip, so it was a cool thing to kind of jump into. But yeah, it was wild. I mean,
So tell me about it. I want to hear all about this.
well, I'm pretty.
My knowledge of sailing begins and ends with my neighbor at the lake who had a sailboat and the time I tried to use it and then had to get towed back to my dock.
Well, that's pretty good.
Right, yeah, because I was able to get out there, but then all of a sudden I was like, where'd the wind go?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you don't get home if you don't have wind. And I didn't bring any oars with me because I didn't think this is a rowboat. I thought it was a friggin' sailboat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I knew nothing. I mean, I was a farm kid. We didn't go out to the lakes or anything, go swimming, but like I had very little boat experience, period, So, and Jeff told me about this. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I kind of started looking at stuff, and I got like the Chapman's Guide to Piloting and Sailing, trying to read through this. And I'm like, oh, fuck this. Because there's just there's a lot of science involved. And but he told me about this stuff and kind of, told me about his boat and stuff. And I didn't realize, like, he told me he had bought it from like a guy on Devil's Lake, I think. And then he had it in Leech Lake, which he said, oh yeah, we practice that. I mean, Leech Lake is like over 90 miles across or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's just, it's the same, length of going to Cuba and stuff. And I didn't really know about like lengths or anything like that, but it turned out, his boat was a 21.5 foot Hunter sailboat. And I didn't really know about size or anything. And then when you see it, you're like, this is like the size of a fucking dinghy. Like, it's very small, but he's like, he's experienced. I mean, Jeff had sailed to the Bahamas. He did a lot of sailing. And so I totally trust him. I'm like, this is legit, it's only 90 miles away.
Yeah.
So,
what's the worst that could, if I fell out, I could probably swim back.
What's the worst that could happen if I sail to Cuba?
Yeah. So, and that was, I mean, that statement right there. I know like this, I don't know anything about statutes of limitations or anything like that. So, but everything about it, I mean, I kind of dread my daughter hearing like the true uncut, like what happened in Cuba thing. But I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff that we did or, that happened in all of life's trivialities, like to get there and back.
In your mind, you think like, yep, this is a weekend thing, like we sail there on a Saturday, we sail back on a Sunday, and then we have brunch.
I knew we wanted to stay as long as we could. I mean, if we could have stayed longer, I would have, because once we got there, I mean, it was completely different than what we had been taught here. Like I went out, I bought like Canada flag patches and all this stuff, because you hear about, don't let the Cubans know that you're American and all this shit. And it's just complete opposite. I mean,
what I was told is Cuba's like stepping back into the 1950s, because you see all these like older vehicles and it feels like another time.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, the ingenuity of everybody there because of the heavy sanctions and stuff. Basically their technology is just making everything from the 50s continue to run, and then using like whatever hack the Soviets, had engines and stuff. So like you'd see this like 56 Chevy or something, and it's running some like 4-cylinder crazy weird Soviet diesel. And there's people like using like gasifier engines where they would like convert wood basically into like alcohol based fuel, which is, I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently they did. I mean, that was what they would do, and use that to run the engines, because oil, like gas and stuff, is like super expensive there, which is crazy because that's, that was like one of their big exports was oil and stuff.
Well, so let's go back to Florida. So you're going to launch from Florida and go to Cuba.
Yeah.
So take us there.
All right. Well, so it took a couple weeks, because we got down there, and like I said, it's in November, it's before Thanksgiving. The weather wasn't really great. They're pretty heavy seas. Like there's a lot of waves and stuff. So we kind of chilled out for a while, spent Thanksgiving down there with Jeff's friends and stuff. And one night in the evening, it was just flat, like it's just not even a ripple. And we're like, okay, this is it. We're going to go. So we grabbed all of our shit. We're going out to the boat. And this is where things like, this is
nighttime.
Cuba.
Nighttime.
Just about, yeah, is dusk. It was still light, but the sun is going down. And as I jump into the boat, like this is like, we got everything going. Jump into the boat. I hear it kaplunk. So my wallet, I had this like big giant leather biker wallet. It's just heavy with the chain that, you know, that you could hook onto your belt and stuff. Well, apparently the last snack I bought, I forgot to zip up my backpack. So my fucking wallet with all of my identity, my social security, all that shit. The only thing that I didn't have in there was my passport and all my cash, which was in my sock, you know, because I heard that's what you do. But anyways, the wallet, plunk right into the marina. And I'm like, fuck. So that's going to suck. There's like my driver's license, all that shit down 60 feet. You know, there's no diving for that in there. You'd never get it. And we had to go. So anyways, so we're going to sail. And we're motoring, you know, because there's no wind, there's nothing. And that boat had like a 9.5 horsepower Honda motor. So it's kind of like we're setting to go to Cuba on a lawnmower, you know? So we're motoring, and, you know, Jeff's kind of cluing me in. I'm getting kind of the feeling. I mean, we did do some sailing before that and stuff too, but, so it's just beautiful out at night. You know, it's dark, and, there's an algae bloom or a coral bloom or whatever. So like there's all that phosphorescence, like the sea is glowing behind you. You know, you're pissing in the water and it's glowing and stuff because you're making the waves. And Jeff's like, I'm crashing. You can have the first thing. So Jeff goes down to sleep, and we had we did have GPSs, and but he didn't have any like manual compass. So like before we left, that was like one of the last things we did is we epoxied a compass onto the side of the boat. So he's down there, and I'm kind of just enjoying this. I'm like, I'm a fucking sailor now. And I put my hand on the side of the boat, and I heard another kerplunk. There goes our fucking compass. So I'm like, Jesus. So Jeff's down there, he's sleeping, you know, and I'm feeling okay. Well, I still have the GPS, because I mean, I'm not sure how to, you know, what I do with the compass anyways. I mean, I'm just looking at our chart. So, and I'm just sailing, and then I remember actually waking up, which is, you should never be waking up as you're like controlling a naval vessel. And I look, and I'm like, oh shit. And I look at the GPS, and it's, you know, it kind of keeps your course, and there's just all these loopy-loos. So I was like, well, there's another great thing I get to explain to Jeff when he gets up, you know? So
why did we make this giant circle and giant circle?
Yeah,
Hey, where's our compass?
And where's our compass? So,
you know, there's a thing in a boat called the circle of death. Like if you fall out of a motorboat, and you learn it when you take boater safety, but for some reason boats like naturally turn just to the right, you know,
Sure.
like the wheel. And so like it changes, you know, where it is. And so if you fall out, what you need to do is you need to swim into the boat's path, because it'll keep going to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. And so if you try and swim to shore, let's say, and the shore is to your right, the boat eventually will catch up and hit you as you're going along. So you got to swim like away from that direction. Keep going.
I didn't read any of that in the Chapman's piloting book.
That's because the Minnesota Department of Resources is the one who puts out the warning about the circle of death.
That's awesome.
Different rules, I think, on lakes and oceans, because just the wave size alone on the ocean is insane compared to lake waves.
Sure. Yep.
So you've been driving in loopy-loos.
So
because you fell asleep.
Yeah, because I fell asleep. Yeah.
Which I don't understand how you could have fallen asleep. I mean, I just get anxiety thinking about this story. I hate rivers. Like, I don't like going on bodies of water.
Yeah.
I would be losing my fucking mind at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I was after I, woke up. Then I was a little nervous, but Jeff was probably pretty used to me fucking up everything. So at that point, water under the bridge per se. So anyways, we spend the next, we're sailing and we're doing all this fun, awesome stuff, and, getting tugged behind the boat in the water, once we get into the Gulf Stream. 'Cause, I mean, the water is just, it's like bath water. Like I never thought it would be still this warm, and you've got like hundreds and hundreds of feet of water below you. But anyways, we're back there, and Jeff's like, you're got the rope and stuff, just getting kind of tugged away, and Jeff does the fun shark, And like instantly, you know, like, oh, that dude's fucking with me. But no, it's just like that fear is like right back into the boat. And we keep going. And like the first sign, you know, it's like, God, when are we going to get there? Because we're cruising at like 3 miles per hour, or whatever the knots are. Because it was still, there is no wind. I mean, it was crazy how the weather had gone from such shitty conditions to just, there's nothing. So we keep motoring on. And eventually we start seeing like a really bright kind of light on the horizon, you know, and we could never figure out what it was. And we keep getting closer and closer, and you'd still see this light, and it's just strange. And eventually we get kind of to the point where you can kind of make out, and you can kind of see it waving and stuff. But we know we're getting closer to Cuba because we, you know, the GPS. And eventually we start hearing radio chatter on the radio and stuff. And we keep hearing the same call. And of course, I took Spanish for like a year in high school. And like all I got was like Busco mis malates, which is where are my suitcases? That's all I can seem to remember. And so we keep hearing the same hailing, you know, these things, but Jeff doesn't know Spanish either. Because why would we bother to know we're going to fucking Cuba? And so we get there, and we're starting to see land and stuff, and we're getting really excited about the fact that we're almost here. And then we start seeing this other light coming towards our way, like really fast, and like billowing smoke and stuff. And then it becomes apparent, like this is like a warship, like a serious ship. And Jeff was like, oh fuck. And then we keep hearing the same calling, and it becomes apparent like that other light, that's like the Cuban Coast Guard with like 50 caliber guns kind of a thing. In that radio chatter was them trying to hail the incoming vessel that's been cruising at such a low, slow speed. They thought it was, you know, something sinister going, because most boats are cruising pretty good. And so our first entrance into Cuba is greeted by like the Navy and with giant fucking guns. Like I'll never forget like the size. Like, holy crap. And like, we don't know what to do. Hands up in the air, you know, they're yelling at us and everything. And then finally we grabbed the radio. It was like, habla no español. This is, you know, U.S. ship A is A, like just trying to go through. And then they were like, somebody started speaking English, of course, you know, and then they're like, oh, okay. Do you need assistance getting into the bay? You know, and like, holy fuck. Like, okay, so that's cool, I guess. You know, and then after that had simmered down, they found out we're just two jackass Americans sailing into Cuba. And it went all good because we sailed into Veradero, and that was kind of an up and coming tourist destination. You know, Havana was still, I think Havana was like 100 miles up the coast. And at this time, this is like right when, is it Emilio or Julio? There was a big case going on in Miami about
with the young
kid.
boy. Yep.
Oh, Gonzalez.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Elio.
God, it's been so long now.
So okay, and that happened like on Thanksgiving. So we're talking about like this is
Yeah.
going down.
Elian
wild.
Gonzalez.
Elian
Gonzalez.
we left the Keys like a couple days after Thanksgiving. Like it's just a couple.
Yeah, because I can see that iconic photo of
him
like
being
of the
pulled out
SWAT
of the-
team guy
yep.
with the gun on
Yeah,
him.
he's
and
terrified. Yeah.
So in his
Janet
family,
Reno.
his family lived in Cardenas, I believe, and that was really close to Veradero. So that's why we kind of went there, because we had these grand ambitions. Like we're like, you know, we're gonna have shit to write books off of. And like before we left, we talked to the Coast Guard and said, you know, we're declaring we're going to Cuba, but we are doing research for Amazon. We're gonna, you know, and we won't be spending any money, because that was the only stipulation. Like if
you told U.S. authorities you were doing
we
this.
did.
Wow. Okay.
Because Jeff was, you know, if it was just him, he wouldn't care. But he's like, you know, I've got another person with me. Jeff is a little older. So he felt, very much responsible, like dragging this like 20-year-old kid with me. We're going to go do this stuff. So, I mean, we did tell the authorities and we filled out paperwork just in case. And it was made very clear that if you spend any American money in Cuba, 10 years in prison, $20,000 fine, forfeiture. Like, I mean, it was just ridiculous. And like, that's crazy. But, so we get to Veradero and, so our grand ambition in the thing was we're going to do all this like life-changing cleansing of our bodies, like, sober up kind of things. And,
maybe the opposite happened.
Yeah, the rum was good, and I mean it was cheap, and yeah.
So when you get there, so you just walk onto shore or whatever from this boat. Where do you go from there? Did you have contacts there to go hang out with? Or
no. So we got to the marina. They check us in and stuff, and then back when I was 20, I was kind of a little bit of the hippie mentality and stuff, and I was kind of into all that spirituality thing. So I had brought like sage with me because I like the smell, and it's supposed to be like this cleansing, I
smudge
truly,
ceremony.
Yeah, I truly thought like this is gonna be, because I was kind of coming off of a relationship and stuff, and I was like gonna,
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so now the whole picture. Yeah.
Who hasn't, taken a dinghy to Cuba after a bad relationship?
So we get there. So that was another like really big fuck up on my part. And Jeff is like, why? Because they're going through everything and they find this bag of like green leafy substance, and they're trying to, and we had really shitty communication. And eventually I think they just got so tired of trying to listen to me say, it's not, you can eat it. It's sage. It's not a drug, and because who knows if they had even seen pot there. Like Cuba, there is no illegal shit happening there because of like there's such a totalitarian regime. They're questioning all that stuff. But once that was done, then it was right up to the discotheque, because it's a big marina, and like Veradero, like I said, is kind of this up and coming tourist kind of a place. So they were trying very hard to make it look like fancy everything. So like there's just this big facade, like along the coast, everything's nice. And when you're right there in the marina and kind of this resorty kind of thing, everything seems like it's on the up and up and stuff. But so to kind of give some insight into like some of the Cuban infrastructure and what was going on at that time. So we're at the discotheque, we're getting plastered, because we're cleansing ourselves, right? And we're getting plastered. We're just dancing horribly to the soulful, sultry Cuban salsa stuff. I'm not a dancer at all. And Jeff kind of walks away for a while, and I'm kind of enjoying myself. And then he comes back and grabs me. He's like, dude, come here. So I follow him, and we go outside this kind of like veranda thing. And this is right there at the marina. And he opens this glass door, and you can see through all the glass. Like this is like this big control room, like radar thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, my card just opened it. He's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I just fucking opened the door. Like
he broke in
the credit card thing, and you slide it in. And I'm like, what the fuck, Jeff? He's like, come on in. There's fucking booze. There's a pool table. There's a big radar thing. I mean, I was like, dude. So of course I went in with them. Yeah. I mean, it's our first night in Cuba. What else are we gonna do? So I mean, this was like
was the military using this room or something?
That was like the Coast Guard. That was the Coast Guard's thing. I mean, that was like definitely
you broke into the Coast Guard
radar room. And where the hell are all the Coast Guard people? That's kind of what I was wondering too. But maybe they were in the old discotheque.
I'm trying to think of Jeff's thought process of, this door is locked. I should break
I should
into
break
it
into
right
it.
now.
I know.
Okay, so
I know.
you're in the discotheque. So this is a room that's like just adjacent to the discotheque.
Yep, because there's like this big
So, in all honesty, the discotheque probably was some kind of like an armament.
Yes.
That they're like, okay, as we're
Yes.
trying to get this to be a touristy place, let's take the bombs out and
Right.
let's put the mirror ball in.
Yeah, basically, because that's what it felt like everywhere. So I mean, that is definitely
They're converting military installations into something else.
into something else, and that was still their functioning part of the. I'm sure that was where they're seeing boats coming in and all that stuff. But yeah, when we're in there, I mean, that was definitely like a thing.
Crazy.
So that was really weird. And of course, we're just lit and don't really think much of it. We find ourselves down to the boat and stuff. And
Were you just staying on the boat then?
yeah,
Okay.
we were just staying on the boat.
Okay.
And
That's what my next question was. Where do you go from there? Like, let's just see if someone will let us hang out.
right. Yeah. No, I mean, we did. We found there's a lot of really great people. So eventually, I mean, we did meet some really awesome people and go to their houses and stuff and hung out with them. But we always slept on the boat because things were just kind of that you don't really know who to trust, especially like the government officials, because they're probably more fucking broke than anybody else. I mean, we met doctors and physicians and everybody that wanted to get out of what they were doing just so that they could get into like working at a bar or something where there's tourists so that they can make some money, because tourists tip. And, otherwise they're stuck with their like $16 and their monthly rations, which they never get. The rations were like non-existent. They did get rum and they got their cigarettes, and that was about it.
So can you explain to me a little bit more how sanctions were working at the time? So was it that Americans could travel there, but you couldn't spend U.S. currency while you were there? You had to convert it before you went there?
You couldn't convert it. Well, yes, I guess if you were an American and you wanted to go to Cuba, the only way to really do it was either to sail there, which kind of under the law
Get there
or whatever.
on your own versus like hiring someone.
Which I thought was risky too, because I had no idea there was like a stationary blimp over like Key West, and that blimp has got a 360-degree viewing angle that they can see all the way to Cuba. So that blimp, they see every ship that's going in and out and where it's going, but how often do they like actually follow up on stuff?
Right.
So, my understanding of it was the FAA would not allow any flight from originating in the United States to Cuba, or any flight originating in Cuba to come to the United States.
Correct.
So you would have to fly from like
Canada, Mexico,
or you can fly like Fargo to Mexico City, Mexico City to Havana.
Yep.
But you'd have to buy that plane ticket separately, like as it,
Yeah.
and then you could change your money into Canadian currency in the United States, and then you could use that Canadian currency to turn it into Cuban currency.
There is no Cuban currency, man. The Cuban peso was, it was worth less than what it cost to mint. Wow. All Cuban money is American money.
Which is funny that like our coins are like that now too.
And every country, when they go to Cuba, all that money is converted into the US dollar. Cuba was run on the US dollar, which I was like, isn't this what we're getting in? The only reason why we get in trouble is if we spent a US dollar here. Well, the whole country is run on the US dollar.
Right.
That's what everybody converted to.
Because at that point, the world economy was backed by the US dollar too.
Yeah.
So no matter where you were, you could probably use that for the most part.
So like how much let's say you get a drink of rum, right?
Yep.
So like what are you paying for it?
Oh man. Like the drinks, like in the marinas and all that stuff was kind of like current market value. Like we thought like, oh, you can get a lobster dinner if you trade somebody 3 squares of toilet paper. Well, in the actual tourist spots, I suppose like a drink was like maybe $2, I think, for like a Cuba Libre or something like that, dinners and stuff, like were that same, kind of what I would have expected in the US even. But you take a trip outside of that and then it's totally different. It's, I mean, destitute, whatever. People would do just about anything to get any of that money. So it felt very strange, like when we did go to Cardenas and stuff, because that was a smaller town in search for, the higher truth and everything. There was we had a lot of people offering like, oh, come to my house. You can have this dinner and stuff for practically nothing. And it just felt so strange to like, you feel like you're taking advantage of people. And literally when we didn't realize at the time, but like these people offering like the lobster dinners and stuff, they were risking their freedom because everything in the ocean around Cuba is Fidel's, so there is no fishing unless you're fishing for Fidel. So those people that are harvesting from the sea, they're stealing. That's theft. And that's like severe punishment in prison, So, and it was happening everywhere, so that was that kind of that first glimpse of like, I fucking hate this American capitalism and all this McDonald's and all this stuff. And I wish it was simpler. And then you go somewhere where that simpler is like,
simpler is imposed upon you by a dictator.
Yeah, there is no choice there. Yeah. Yeah.
So how long total were you in Cuba?
We about a month, I think. I think it was like 3.5, 4 weeks.
Did you have any communication with people in the U.S. during that? Like, did your family know how you were? Friends know how you were? If you were alive?
I think I did buy a international phone card, and I think I got a hold of my mom or dad at one point just to let him know, like, hey, I'm still kicking.
I would be losing my mind. I don't have a kid, and I would assume that if I had a kid, dude, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna sailboat to Cuba. Yeah, see you maybe.
You see, like when all through that naivety of life and stuff, I never thought anything of it until like me thinking of like my daughter in a couple years going, so Dad, I'm gonna go, and I'm like, what? No. So, but I mean, I guess as a parent, what can you do to stop your child other than like locking them away or something?
Right.
So yeah, I'm forever kind of like, I don't know, humbled or feel for my folks for having to put up with.
While you were in Cuba, was there ever a moment where you thought, I don't know if I'm making it back to the US?
Yeah. Actually, we took this like cab. It was an illegal cab drive, but like I said, everything you do, somebody is doing it under the books. Like there's the official taxis, and then there's like dudes just driving these jalopies, and it is way cheaper to do that. And even the guys driving the official taxis, if you say no mitre or no meter, like they'll shut the meter off and like hook you up, you just pay them a different rate, or you just give them some cash.
They'll keep it all themselves rather than having to share it with the taxi company.
Exactly. So I mean that happened all over the place. But we had met some people, and they were telling us about they had a friend that would take us to Havana. So we eventually planned on sailing to Havana, but after we had got there, like again, like the weather just turned to shit, and there's 6 foot seas and stuff all the time. And like I said, that boat was fucking small, so we went there, and we're exploring Havana and stuff, and I used to experiment with things. And of course, like my biggest goal is to like, I want to find some of this Cuban botanical stuff, like and
some pharmaceuticals.
So yeah, because oh man, yeah, pharmacies too. It's so strange to be talking about this. I haven't talked a lot about it,
I guess this was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
this was literally 20 years ago. I just did the math.
Man,
Sorry to make you feel that age.
Yeah,
but
no, it's good. So I ended up finding this stuff and feeling really super proud of myself. Like, this is so cool. I'm gonna be like famous back at the marina.
I'm about to do drugs in a country I'm not supposed to be in. That I came on a dinghy.
Right, yeah. And so on our way back, and I thought we were going to die in the taxi, honestly. Like, driving is just insane. 'Cause there's police, but nobody's like in cars. Like, there's no police cars. There's very few. And what few there are, that they're more of like security, dealing with like collecting money. Like, no police officer has a gun. They have lots and lots of fucking papers.
Oh, okay.
So there's just paperwork, and that's what people are afraid. I mean, there's that whole like secret. Everybody's hush hush. Nobody really trusts each other because you don't know who's actually working for the government and who's a rat and all that stuff. You know, I mean, that's like totally a thing there. But so we're driving back, and the taxi cab driver gets flagged. And he pulls over, and he's super nervous, you know, because here's these two American blokes in the back, and, you know, has to explain, you know, and I could tell like tension is high, and I'm like, I've got fucking weed in my pocket. I'm like, oh, that was a really bad decision. And turns out it's just nothing, you know, so that was good. But at that moment, I could just see like
Fucker factor really goes up. And you're like,
yeah. Aside from like breaking into like a naval radar station, and I mean, you know, like I
faced down by a gunship in the middle of the night on the ocean.
Gunship, like I'm just thinking, like, oh my god, I've got like just this tiny little thing, you know. So
what about like the language barrier? Neither of you speak Spanish,
but thankfully, all the rest of the world speaks English. So there was very few times where the communication was like, we had to like walk away from something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was media like there? Like, you turn on the TV.
None.
There was no TV. There was no.
I don't recall seeing a single television. I honestly don't.
So even like Western movies weren't getting in and stuff?
No. Like, some of the you know, we brought a lot of music, a lot of CDs with us, and like everybody wanted the fucking Beatles. Like, I get it. The Beatles are cool, but not that cool, you know.
I'm with you.
Like,
well, and so it's odd because there's no British embargo on Canada,
right.
So they should have been able to get a hold of the Beatles.
It's very weird. It was very strange. So one of the biggest surprise reactions we got was like playing some Frank Zappa, and that was like pretty eye opening for this one dude. Cause we had, you know, when we were sailing up to Havana, we stopped at a couple other really small marinas and stuff, and they're like, people are always like trying to open up some trading and stuff. So
you guys are pretty popular.
Yeah. We you know, and what's funny is like at 3 of those marinas, we were like the smallest boat to come from America, and we were the only boat ever licensed from North Dakota in all of the marinas we went. But strange enough, in Veradero, when we got there, we were right next to a slip with a boat that was registered from Minnesota. And it was a 43-foot boat, which was double the length of ours, and it was solo sailed by a guy, which was really incredible. I was like, holy crap. There's a dude from Minnesota. He lived in Rochester, and
wow.
He was on vacation.
So you hung out with him? Or?
Yeah, we hung out when we could. You know, he was on vacation, but he was very busy. And this was like, you know, he had like the mobile satellite links with his computer thing and stuff. And I thought that was all really cool. Like, this is like before like digital cameras were even really
cell phones were not a thing yet.
Not really. I mean, it was, I think they were still like the pretty large handset.
They were still making jokes in movies about cordless phones.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's weird.
Well, I'm just trying to think like, okay, so I'm trying to think of movies I know that have like that Cuban scene in them. So for example, one of my favorite movies, Captain Ron.
Oh yeah.
At one point, the Pirates of the Caribbean steal their boat and they put them on like a raft, and their raft lands
In Cuba?
in Cuba. And luckily Captain Ron shows up and helps them in Cuba. And then McHale's Navy, the forgettable McHale's Navy movie starring Mr. Tom Arnold, has a scene where they're breaking into, like, Tim Curry has set up this missile silo on this island, and they need to get a hold of a bunch of like old school Russian technology so that they can break into this missile silo. And they're like, well, where are we going to go? Cuba.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of them get arrested. And so David Allen Greer dresses up like Fidel Castro and gets them out of jail.
So, all right, so you spend a month in Cuba.
Yeah.
At what point is the decision made, let's go back, let's get out of here?
Basically, when I ran out of money.
Okay.
That was, I mean, if I was more frugal, I mean, I think I could have, really, but like I said, the fucking rum was really good. The cigars were good. And the funny thing about the pharmacies there, you just walk in and tell them something and they just give you whatever. So
just it's the same thing in Mexico. Like if you go down to Tijuana,
oh, my back.
it's strip club, pharmacy, nightclub.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was like super used to, like, if you were going to go to like to an American doctor or something and you just wanted to get high, but you're like making up, oh, like I totally broke my fucking back. Like you go into like a pharmacy there or something and they're just like, do you want Valium? Mm-hmm. Basically. So you could just buy Valium or whatever. So, yeah.
So how much money do you think you spent in a month? Like ballpark?
I think I brought like 2,000.
So you were able to survive on foreign soil for $2,000 in a month. That is pretty amazing.
A lot of that was actually spent in Florida.
Oh,
I would guess maybe by the time I got to Cuba, like I think I maybe had 1,000, and I'm partying and having fun. Mm-hmm. Like you could have probably lived for a month on 50.
Did you fall in love while you were there?
With Cuba, yes. Yeah, no, it would be something I've always like had the dream of like, oh, I just want to bring the whole family there to witness it and see it and stuff, because there is this like beauty there. And it's not so much like, I mean, sure, the country's pretty, but you've got to have some pretty dark tinted glasses to find the actual beauty, because there's so much shit. Like the coastline is full of fucking oil. Like the whole beaches, there really were no like swimming beaches, because like I said, like remember I was talking about that bright light? Well, that was just burning the flare off of the oil.
Oh,
things, because that's all over the place.
I assume that would be like a light from the gunship, but that was the second light that
was the second light. Yeah. So like you would see those lights, and that was like from their oil drills or whatever. But yeah, everywhere, and there's just the remnants of the Cuban Missile Crisis, like all these armaments and stuff along the coast. I mean, it's really cool, but then at the same time, it's kind of depressing, because you're like, the shit should have never have happened, in the first place. But the degradation of like the actual environment was really kind of stomach churning, and that people are living in this. And then there's this whole facade where you'll have 60 miles of beautifully paved roads that lead from one tourist spot to the next. And then the entire rest of the country is basically like a landfill, lots of concrete and steel is very strange. You'd think like there's like this jungle in Cuba and there's trees and everything, but there's barely any like wooden structures or anything like that. Havana itself is beautiful, but I mean, that's a super fucking old city, I mean, it was really, really cool, but at the same time, it's completely falling apart because there's no no infrastructure being put in.
Were you seeing anything like, obviously you were seeing a lot of poverty.
Yeah.
But it would seem to follow that you would then maybe see small pockets of extreme wealth.
Oh, absolutely.
The people who hoard it.
It was insane. Havana was like, Veradero, you had this like, that facade, that illusion kind of, but it wasn't to the extreme of like getting into Havana. And then you start seeing like that real divide even more so. And, you know, a lot of it is maybe not like the actual Cuban population, but the people who are visiting there. But there were people that, you know, like the guys on the streets, they would point out like, that's so-and-so party official or whatever. And you'd see that shit. And, you would see the wealth and, but I was pretty blown away at the size of these yachts and stuff that were in Havana. It was fucking crazy.
So when you headed out for Cuba, you had a nice, placid, flat ocean.
Yeah.
What was it on the return?
Fucked. It was like, so about the time that we're coming back, we,
it's December at this point, right?
Yeah, it's December. It's before Christmas. And, we got used to sailing in kind of bigger seas because it was still like, you know, like 6 foot waves were like no problem at that point. You were like, because we wanted to explore and it was getting pretty, you could only stay in one spot for so long and be like,
were you sailing around Cuba? Like,
no, well, we thought we would do a lot more, you know, but I mean, for like a week, we were pretty much in Veradero. So that took a lot of the time off because we were, you know, just got there kind of, but we had planned to like basically every day we were going to travel around and do as much sailing as we could, but there's a lot of boozing involved and hard to wake up and go sailing. But
last thing I want to do when I'm hungover is get on the ocean.
You know, I thought I was very nervous about that, but thankfully I didn't have any seasickness things. So, because I heard that can suck balls, just puking all day. But yeah. So, anyways, we're at the decision to come back. We're looking at the weather and stuff, and it was the same outlook. And we're like, hey, this is a really good window. It didn't change all weekend. So we got all of our gas and stuff, and we're sailing back, and it was pretty nice. You know, it was a little bit of heavy seas, but it was still beautiful. It was like the perfect picturesque, like, leaving Cuba. And so we're sailing back, and I still had some of that magic Valium with me, so it was time to go to bed. So I popped a couple of them and went down, and I woke up just soaking wet. I just felt this splash. I'm like, what the fuck? I thought, you know, and I'm looking and like the cabin doors were shut. And I was like, what the fuck happened? And I was like, whoa. And I opened up the port, and there's Jeff, like he just buck, like sailing buck, man. And I'm like, what the fuck, you know? He's like, I gotta reef the mainsail. And I'm like looking at like, this is some serious fucking weather. Like it was really, I was like, that's some waves. Like I'd never seen that kind of shit before. And he'd never actually reefed his mainsail. I love saying that term. But so it was in that Hunter boat, it has kind of a safety feature where if it starts to lean too much, it'll start to automatically correct itself and it'll start steering itself into the wind. But at that point, you're going head first into the waves, and you're going right into the trough. So it's really, for a 21.5 foot boat in that kind of water, it was really dangerous. And when you're doing that too, like you can't really motor because your motor is out of the water half the time. And so we had to do it. And so I'm like, holy shit, you know? And, I get up there, I'm trying to sail, you know, and Jeff is at the front of the boat, like literally like feet coming off the boat and slamming down and trying to tie all these knots and all this stuff. And then I'm starting to think like, okay, I know we have an EPIRB. So if we do go down, at least there's a beacon that's going to go out there. But, and then I'm thinking, where the fuck's like our life rafts and shit? And like, we've been living on the boat for like a month. So of course that's like in the bilge way at the front underneath like a month's supply of fucking dirty clothes and everything else. And I'm like, bobbing in the water in this is probably safer than trying to like go through that shit. Cause there's probably some nasty stuff in there. I don't want any of that. But yeah, so the sailing back was very, very fraught. I mean, it was pretty scary. When we did finally hear like through the radio in the weather broadcasts and stuff, the forecast was like 15 to 16 foot seas, and then as 25 foot to 30 foot swells. And I just remember like when we'd get at the top, like you could see forever. And then when you'd be at the bottom of the trough, like you look forward and all you see is like this wall of water. And every time I'd be like, this is it, but thank God for that Valium I took, because it really helped keep me centered and calm throughout it, And I mean, it got to be like pretty awesome, I mean, we lived through it and stuff.
How long do you think you were in that situation?
It felt like forever. It really did, 'cause it was overnight. And Jeff said I was pretty out. Like when I did go down, I don't recall how long, I had slept or whatever, but obviously it was enough for a while. And, I do remember, when we came out and stuff, and the motor was starting to have problems. Jeff had to pop the top off and stuff, and he was trying to fight with I don't know if we got some bad gas or whatever, but it wouldn't run really well and all that stuff. And,
but the fact that it was getting soaked by
waves
had done
I'm
something
sure
to it.
That probably had something to do with it. So, I mean, but anyway, so the storm calms down. I mean, we're just completely wrecked. And, I had sailed for a while, after things came down, and then, Jeff slept for a while, took another churn. And then, somehow we had ran our battery like super low, and basically we had no more radio. We didn't have any running lights. We had the motor. And, cause that was one of the downfalls. We didn't have like an actual alternator for anything. So you had to always keep it charged, and you had like a little solar charger and stuff. And we, unfortunately, in the scheme of things, forgot to keep that extra battery charged and stuff. And anyways, when we're coming back, we're sailing across the Gulf Stream. So there's a huge shipping channel and stuff. And, I'm asleep. He wakes me up, and like, we are like literally just right next to one of them big fucking shipping container ships, and like, he's like, I don't think anybody can see us because we got no lights and stuff. And like, they could even check to see,
right.
But we were like damn close, and that was pretty cool too. But yeah, I mean, we made it back.
What's that feeling when you finally see land?
In this case, it was like pretty gut wrenching, like in the good way, kind of. Cause I think like after we got back to Florida and I started like kind of recounting like the last month as feeling pretty positive about still being alive. Cause it's still when hearing myself kind of say those things, I feel like it shouldn't have happened, but it did, it's kind of that weird, like, I can't believe some of that shit I did kind of thing, but I guess that's what learning is or life is.
I always feel it changed your life, that trip.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to say any experience will change your life, especially when you're young, but, yeah, I think it did.
Did it ever make you feel more prepared for other challenges in life? Like, well, I once sailed to Cuba on a dinghy, so like I can handle this because I handled that.
In some instances, yeah. But I think people deal with like anxiety in a lot of different ways. And I think I've always had some sort of like anxiety with things, and sometimes like even knowing that you like did this like really cool and crazy thing, you kind of get nervous about it or whatever. So even small things, sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to fucking call to order pizza. Somebody else fucking handle this for me, you know. I think I've gotten a lot better, you know.
How did your mom react when has she heard the story? Did she hear the story?
You know, I don't think I've really told like an unedited, you know, like I think I've mentioned, you know, said like, oh yeah, there was this big storm and all this stuff, but maybe not quite the content or context, you know. When
I was in the 3rd grade, my family on my dad's side, they're all from Kentucky. We went down to Kentucky to visit them, and my uncle organized a canoe excursion for all of us, just on a river, you know, and there hadn't been a ton of rain, so there was a lot of choppy whitewater.
Sure.
And none of us knew what we were doing when it came to canoeing. I was in the 3rd grade. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And our canoe was the last one to get in the water. It was my dad, me, my sister, and my grandmother. And the moment we got in the water, the canoe tipped over.
Oh, man.
None of us knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
And my sister and I got trapped under the canoe. And to us, this was like a raging river.
Oh, yeah.
I bet if I went back and looked at it now, it'd be much smaller and much easier to handle. But at the time, it was terrifying.
Right.
And ever since then, I had this really, especially as a younger person, a crippling fear and anxiety about being on rough water, about even just being on water in general, not being on land. And so when I think about what you did, I thought I would have died with just the anxiety leading up to it.
Right.
I would never have been able to handle it, even with placid ocean water at night. Going to a foreign country that we're not supposed to go to.
Right.
Like, I cannot imagine what it would have, what kind of either courage or naivety it would have taken.
Right. Yeah.
to take that on.
Well, I mean, and you know, I've always been that risk taker, I think in some aspects. And as I've grown older and gained sobriety and stuff, you know, I always look back at like the reasons behind, you know, anxiety and behind doing those things, and that kind of like risky behavior or whatever is like that thrill. And I think some of that is just to kind of escape the anxiety that you have like inside of you. So when you're doing things that seem like shouldn't be done, you kind of feel outside of your body a little bit.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like it's the reality.
It's like you're watching it happen.
A little bit, yeah. So you kind of get to escape that like feeling of insecurity or whatever, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah. Try not to get so too deep there.
It's good. We like it when people get deep on this show. I talked about sausage links earlier in the intro for this. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about breakfast food?
I love it. And you know what? I just had some great Thai at Leela Thai's yesterday, and they have some fucking delicious sausage on the menu.
Really?
Like really good. It is really good.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to make a trek for the sausage.
If a Thai place started serving like a breakfast, I would be totally down to try that.
Well, I bet a Thai breakfast would be really good.
I have no idea what goes into a Thai breakfast. What's a Cuban breakfast?
Yeah, oh, man. There is some weird shit, but a lot of normal stuff too.
What'll be one of the weird things?
Well, I don't know if it was just the shitty like hotel, like the restaurant thing, but like this hamburger patty, but they would cook it like super, super rare with like a runny egg on the top. So it's kind of like, you know, like,
sure.
But it was just really strange.
Huh.
That sounds really good to me right now. I think I could eat a raw hamburger. I'm that guy.
What's that called? Tiger meat? Is that what's
for tiger meat is raw hamburger, but it's got spices in it.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
It's not just raw hamburger.
Gotcha.
Raw hamburger is just straight up raw hamburger.
You know, yeah, it doesn't sound so bad until you see where the, you know, like what the cows have been eating.
Right.
Like when I was there, like it just, when I got it, I was like, oh man. Cause the cows are like, you know, they got a rope around their neck and they got like 4 feet around them tied to a pole. And like the only thing to eat's like some fucking plastic bottles and you know, like it's like, oh, so that's what I'm eating.
You know, it's interesting because once once we lifted some of these sanctions against Cuba, one of the first places Cuban officials came was North Dakota, because our soil and their soil are incredibly similar in a lot of ways. And so they learned a lot of farming techniques, and they were really interested, I think, like in soybeans and potatoes and stuff like that. So they came to check out what we were going.
Well, and that was the other strange, you know, when I was there, I'd always thought of this like tropical climate, and there's all these like vegetables and all this stuff, and there just wasn't. There was not a cabbage, and some of that, you know, I'm sure is just because of the institutionalized like government controlling everything, but fresh produce was like very non-existent.
Did you ever go to like a tobacco field or anything like that?
No, we did tour one of the cigar manufacturing plants, and we got some good cigars.
I smoked my first Cuban when I was in the Dominican Republic, and like there really is a difference between.
Absolutely.
I mean, they have refined it down to an art.
Yep.
I think of all those Swisher Sweets I had back in the day, and like, what a waste.
Yeah, I was by no means like a cigar aficionado. Like I had like Swisher Sweets or Black and Milds when I was growing up or whatever, but I found out, you know, I've learned Fidel smokes Cohibo Diplomaticos, so Esplendido Dominic, something like that. So that's of course what I got, and that was like the biggest, most giant cigars that they'd make at the Partagas factory. So that's what I got. I felt like a stud,
and they last forever.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really a cigar guy, but I felt fucking cool, like smoking on one of them, you know?
Did people talk about Fidel while you were there?
Only good things.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very rare when people would actually open up about stuff. I mean, there were times when, you know, people knew, like when you'd take a taxi or whatever and nobody's around. I mean, people would actually talk about that stuff. But for the most part, if you're in a public place,
it's too dangerous.
Yeah. And like every once in a while you would see like some graffiti that you knew was like anti, but man, there was just so much propaganda. Everywhere was the stuff for the Cuban state.
El Presidente es no bueno.
Yeah, and you would see stuff, and like the stuff you would see about Che Guevara and stuff was like kind of like almost like the folklore. Like even that seemed to be downplayed over Fidel, you know, from Fidel. So, but
did you run into a lot of people from other countries? Like, was Cuba a popular vacation destination to non-Americans?
Yeah, we met a lot of Germans, a lot of French. It was really strange. It seemed like we met a lot of Germans, a lot of Canadians, not a lot of Mexicans, but there was quite a few different Europeans that were there. A lot of Soviet people. We were actually at this one marina, like Tarara, I think it was called. But anyways, right outside of it, it was like a huge medical complex. It was a completely gated city, and that was a city that a lot of the Chernobyl victims and stuff from the nuclear, that was where they went because of the better climate and stuff. And that was like a fucking world-class like medical facility, but it was like basically a city. And so right around there, it was weird because it was just all these Russians and white dudes, you know? And it totally felt like a different place. It felt like a tropical Russia in some aspects.
I went to high school with a kid who went to Cuba to get his medical degree.
Sure.
So it's like incredible. The expenses, you can't even compare the two things.
Same with the dental stuff. I mean, it was like world-class medical stuff, and is weird.
Well, Ryan, as we wrap this thing up, so do you have any Go Murphy songs that were inspired by your time in Cuba?
Well, yeah, you know, kind of. Actually, you know, my friend Jeff that I sailed down with, he had lost his life in 2012, and at that time I was we were kicking around this song, and I had this riff going and stuff, and like it was cool. And Marcus came over, and like that for practice or whatever. And like the day before I'd found out Jeff had passed away, and he was starting to come up with some lyrics for this thing. And it was just really weird because I hadn't talked to him or hadn't told him that Jeff died. And he started singing it, and I was like, this is just fucking weird. The way how what he had written was like really mixed into, I think, some of the way how I envisioned like Jeff's feelings and stuff. And so yeah, A is the song that came out of that, and that was kind of a bit of a nod back to the boat that we sailed on, which was A is A. That was Jeff's boat.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
If people want to find out more about Go Murphy, maybe catch a show or something, should they go about doing that?
I guess probably Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we haven't really been active. Life happens and things. So we've basically kind of been on a little bit of a hiatus, a break for over the summer, and, school starts, kids are back and stuff. But I mean, we're still kicking it, just kind of laying low. We haven't been playing as many shows as we have been and stuff, but our music's still, it's on. We've got a Bandcamp page and stuff, so if a person so chose, they could go on there and stream a little Murph.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to stream some Murph today.
Yeah, man.
In fact, I'm going to use that term for everything. Like, what are you doing for lunch? I'm going to go stream some Murph. Stream some Murph, baby.
Yeah.
Ryan Dahl, thanks for being our guest.
Oh, no, man. Thanks for inviting me. It was really kind of cool to reminisce about the life experience. Kind of cool. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. I mean, there's wanderlust, but I also do not know anything about sailing. And so
that story makes me really pumped to go home and just get back into bed for a couple hours.
sit in your couch.
Yep.
But it does make me want some rum.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go get some rum. A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. I think that if people were smart, they'd start making a thing called a pancake pine, which is 3 pancakes in a stack, but then you shove sausage links in there, and so it looks like it's all sticking out, and then you pour syrup over it. It's a pancake pine.